and wore a vague, cautious smile that said, I hear what you say, but I'm going to do things my way anyway. You could see he was as obstinate as sin. I remember I was wondering why the Empire so loved Coryphos. He reigned for a bare 20 years over 2 millennia ago, and most of the time he was away conquering places, but they persist in regarding his time as the Golden Age. When we had to stand up for the entrance of the present Emperor, a very different person, small, plain, and dour. You do wonder how it is that emperors always marry the most beautiful women in several worlds and yet produce someone like Timos the Ninth, whom you would hardly notice in the street. You would glance at him and think that this was a short man with weak eyes and a chip on his shoulder. Timos the Ninth was one of very few in the Empire who needed to wear glasses. This embarrassed me as I stood up. I was the only other person in the court in spectacles, as if I were setting up to be the Emperor's equal. In many ways, of course, a magid is the equal of any ruler, but in this particular court of inquiry I was a mere onlooker, there by law to certify simply whether or not the accused had broken the law as stated. I was not even supposed to speak until after a verdict had been reached. This, among other legal facts, was tediously made known to me in the preliminaries after we all sat down and the prisoner was marched in and made to stand in the centre. He was a pleasant-looking youngster of 21 or so, called Timotheo. He did not look like a lawbreaker. I'm afraid that, apart from registering with some perplexity that Timotheo was an alias and that, for obscure legal reasons, his real name could not be given, I could not force my jet-lagged mind to attend very well. I remember going back to my thoughts of Coryphos the Great. He stood to the Empire in the place of a religion, it seemed to me. The wretched place had religions in plenty, over 1,000 godlets and goddities, but the worship of these was a purely personal thing. As an example of how personal, I recalled that Timos the Ninth had, about 15 years ago, adopted the worship of a peculiarly unlovable goddess who inhabited a bush planted on the grave of a dead worshipper and who imposed on her followers a singularly joyless code of morals. This probably explained the Emperor's pinched and gloomy look. But no one else at court had felt the need to adopt the Emperor's faith. It was Coryphos who united everyone. Here I was jerked to alertness. The Emperor himself read out the charges against the young man in elaborate legal language. Stripped of the law talk, it was appalling, even for the Empire. The so-called Timotheo was the Emperor's eldest son. The decree he was said to have broken stated that no child of the Emperor, by any of his true wives, high ladies, or lesser consorts, was to know who his or her parents were. The penalty for discovering who they were was death. And death for anyone who helped an imperial child find out. The Emperor then asked Timotheo if he had broken this decree. Timotheo had evidently known no more of this decree than I had. He was looking as shocked and angry as I felt. I could have applauded when he answered dryly, "Sire, if I hadn't broken it before, I would have broken it when you read out my parentage just now." "But have you broken the decree?" the Emperor reiterated. "Yes," said Timotheo. Catch-22, I thought. I was furious. What a charade! The worst of it was that Timotheo was intelligent as well as pleasant. He would have made a much better emperor than his father. It had obviously taken some ingenuity to find out who he was. He had been one of the 4 fosterlings in the house of a provincial noble, and, as the inquiry proceeded, it became clear that the other 3 fosterlings and the noble must have given him some help. But Timotheo stuck to it that he had done the detective work and made the discovery by himself. Then he had made the bad mistake of writing to his mother, the Emperor's first consort, for confirmation. "Did it not occur to you that, once you were known, my enemies might kidnap you in order to threaten me?" the Emperor asked him. "I wasn't going to tell anyone," Timotheo said. "Besides, I can look after myself." "Then you were intending to claim the imperial..."